Testing.
We'll call the meeting to order. If you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Maggio? Present. Commissioner Gregoire?
I am here.
Commissioner Topchin?
Here.
Commissioner Charity?
Here.
Commissioner Buckles? Vice Chair Bergstein? Chair Kerpies?
Here. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? I'd entertain a motion to approve if there's one.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have you had a chance to look at the minutes from the
14th.
December 14th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of December 14, 2017.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes have been passed. Do we have any public, we do have public comments. Tori?
Hello, Tory Berger, West Hollywood. Public Safety Commission, I want to let you guys know I'll still come when I can, but another person from our commission wanted to be your liaison for rent stabilization. So you guys have a lot of meetings, so I may try to come still to keep you guys in touch when I can. About the code enforcement, I go out with our sheriffs too, and I'm really in touch with like a lot of our residents in the neighborhood watch captains and things. And the abandoned buildings, it's really tough for some of the residents when like some of the homeless keep coming into these buildings. But I told Jeff before I got here, I said, you guys are doing a great job, particularly Eugene Alper has been really great with communications with our residents, and they're really right on top of it. So I think that this is a really good move in the right direction with that. But I wanted to bring to light something new. I don't know if even Jeff knows about this, maybe he does, that's starting to happen even in the mid-city now. Some of the homeless are now not just going into abandoned buildings, but within this last week, I've had like 3 reports of them going in and staying in a vacant apartment. So, for example, in my building, there's an apartment. They've painted it and everything. It's a nice apartment. And some homeless have figured out how to get in. And they were in there for 2 weeks before anybody knew. And the sheriffs came and arrested them. They were back the next day to get some of their stuff. They've been back 4 times. They were there last night again. They just keep figuring out how to get back in. So they're getting caught and released. Across the street, same thing from our building. Our last Monday meeting, there was a guy who came, was threatened by a homeless guy, and I went down and met with him. And he says, the guy says I have his key, and he had a threatening letter that this guy's going to go after him. And he showed me what's going on, and there was a room that for electricity or something, and apparently this homeless guy went and put his own lock on that room, and he'd go in there, and I guess he wanted to keep his thing safe. So just to let you know that I think that this subcommittee that you're talking about is a really good idea, and it's starting to creep into the rent-stabilized housing. So just so I give you a tip on what it seems like is starting to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe that was our only public comment for this evening. So we will move into the director's manager's report.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. You have a busy calendar ahead of you in January, February, and March. I won't go into great detail on the items However, on January 25th, your next meeting, you will be holding a study session to receive information on upward rent adjustments for seismic retrofitting. We covered this at the last meeting. This really kicks off a review of that program and the process, and a consideration of any changes that the commission may wish to recommend to the council. I want to point out at your March 8th meeting, is we intend to, that the commission would have a discussion that night and formulate that recommendation. So in between January 25th and March 8th, we're going to be doing some community engagement. We do have 2 housing meetings that we are doing on February 1st and February 15th. And then we have 2 seismic meetings that we're also hosting to provide information to the community and to receive input and comments from them, from tenants, landlords, and anyone else who's interested and affected or impacted by that. On March 8th, we also had to schedule 2 appeals. So it is tight. Why we have these 3 items together is so that we can get the seismic retrofit item back up to the council in April. However, we have flexibility. So I'm not asking for input tonight at this meeting. However, commissioners, I would ask you to think about that meeting. It would be a long one, and let me know your receptivity to having those 3 items in the same night, or if you would like me to move the review of the upward rent adjustments and the recommendation. Like I said, I don't think that we can move the appeals. The February 8th meeting is canceled, the commission for lack of quorum, and we did some checking. We can hold a special meeting on March 22nd offsite, and so we'll do that at Plummer Park. It will not be televised, and I am open and receptive to hearing topics. So we do have the priorities list, and if between now and in the next couple of weeks, if commissioners would like to send me an email with some recommended items that we would explore, I can bring those back to the next meeting, and we can see how the commission feels. That concludes my report.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can't we use February 8th for that busy night?
February 8th was canceled for the Rainbow Key Awards, I believe. So the chamber is not available.
Maybe we could do that at Plummer Park too?
We could consider that. I would hesitate a little bit. It's a little early on. If we were going to create a recommendation, then that's actually before we've gone to the community and done our community engagement. Also, I think that it would be wisest for the commission to have your public hearing and your considerations in this chamber where people are familiar and comfortable with you making your decisions. We can also televise here very well, where we can't do that at Plummer Park. So I would encourage you to keep that item here in this chamber, since it's a very important item.
So we really don't have any options then to...
We can push it. I am willing to push it a little down the road, but as I said, you don't have to respond tonight, but please just provide your receptivity and your feelings on that, holding those 3 items that evening, and we'll see what we can do.
So if I understand correctly, on January 25th, we'll have our study session where we will get our initial review of the seismic retrofitting rent adjustment, and then after that, we'll be able to mull around with that information. February 1st and February 15th, the staff will be hosting community meetings on this subject.
Those are our housing meetings, and so we do an
more in
annual
general
meeting.
than-
However, we anticipate that people will have questions, and so participants that come to those meetings may actually have questions about this, and we'll be prepared to give them some information, and then we will also direct them to the targeted seismic meetings that we will be holding in February. We're just still working out the messaging on those meetings and the actual dates, and we'll get those up on the external calendar ASAP.
And will those hopefully happen before February 22nd, so that we have that information going into the February 22nd meeting, or is that?
It's the March 8th meeting that the February 22nd meeting is on 2 separate topics. That's on tenant habitability.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And on a tenant buyout agreement requirements. And so that's a very important night as well. These are real value added to our program requirements that we're coming forward with. So I'm suggesting March 8th is the first opportunity to formulate a recommendation on any changes to the upward rent
And
adjustment.
we'll have public comments by then from those
Correct.
two.
You will
meeting-
have,
two prior
you will
meetings.
have the full compilation of public comments at that point, yes.
Great. Any other questions?
I should add, I want the commission to be aware, because typically we do our study sessions off camera. This study session is going to be on camera.
And it will be down at the...
No, you will be up at
the
where
podium.
you are here, yes. You'll be seated where you are. The reason it's a study session is that this is an item that falls within your purview. You're not taking any action that evening. You're just here that evening to receive information on the program, ask questions, and then we'll be returning with an actionable item on March 8th.
Great, thank you. No other questions? All right, then we'll move into, thank you for that report. We'll move into commission comments.
I had one. I wanted this evening to thank Larry Gross for his efforts in regard to Assembly Bill 1506 and for his continued commitment to rent stabilization and his continued efforts to help repeal the Costa-Hawkins Act. We're not there yet, but we will be. I'm confident we will be at some point. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? I just want to add to to piggyback on what your comment was. Is, Allison Regan, today, this morning in the California State Assembly, the Assembly Bill 1506 that Commissioner Maggio just spoke about was heard in the Housing and Community Development Committee hearing, or had a excuse me, had a hearing on that bill in the community, or in the Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee of the Assembly, and like he said, it didn't pass. It died in the committee, but I wanted to just acknowledge and recognize Allison Regan from the city of West Hollywood. She's normally here for our meetings. She's our staff attorney. She's probably on a plane coming back now, but she was up there and was one of the three witnesses in favor of the bill to repeal Costa-Hawkins, and she did an outstanding job, which is, there's no doubt that she's going to do an amazing job, but she, I was very much impressed and so happy that she was there representing the city, because not only did she know exactly what she was talking about and presented actual facts in this very controversial dialogue where a lot of things are said by both parties, but she stuck to the facts, and nobody in the room refuted her at all, or tried to refute her at all in any of the information. And I thought we were just so fortunate to have her represent the city and really all tenants across the state in her role today. So hopefully maybe staff can take that back to the city hall and let them know that how much we appreciate her work and how amazing she did today. So with that, any other comments?
You wanted to thank Richard Boone, too?
Oh, yeah, I'll thank my boss, too, for introducing that little bill, AB 1506. But, so we'll move right into our unfinished business this evening, a discussion, proactive code enforcement programs and consideration for forming a subcommittee to further study and report back to the commission. This was something that, out of the conversation we had following the presentation at our last meeting about Los Angeles's code enforcement, proactive code enforcement program, and we had some questions, and I think staff is prepared to give us a report.
So thank you again, Chair, Commissioners. We had every intention of having some staff here present to answer questions on what our pilot program was many years ago. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, our staff that had been a part of that program are not been able, they're not here. They weren't able to make it. This doesn't prevent you, the commission, from still considering the formation of a subcommittee and proceeding forward with exploring proactive code enforcement and coming back, returning to the commission with a recommendation. I do have with me this evening Jeff Abel, the code compliance manager, And he has looked into what this would mean and has some of the figures, the dollars, staffing anticipated to do such a program. So if the commission does wish this evening, I think that he could provide a little summary of what some of those estimates are. However, the commission could certainly just go into your discussion on whether to form the subcommittee. That's my report.
Yeah, could we just get like a few sentences about what you've learned about what we may have had, the city may have had at one point, or are you familiar with? I know you weren't involved with it, correct?
Good evening, Jeff Walble, Code Compliance Manager with the city. No, I was not involved. That was when residential code compliance was in the Rent Stabilization Department. We took over, well, we merged 4 years ago. My cursory, limited knowledge I have on the subject is it was a CDBG funded program. There was one officer assigned. It was only in the redevelopment area. I want to say it was from Genesee to La Brea. I don't know whether they inspected all the units or if they inspected individual buildings. I'm not sure of those details of the program.
Okay. Thank you. That gives us an idea of kind of where it was. Does anyone want to start? Yeah.
At our last meeting, I raised this question. You know, I guess I was impressed with the presentation we had from the city of Los Angeles. They seem to have a pretty impressive, successful program. But I understand that program came about at a time when the city of Los Angeles had a lot of slumlord conditions around the city, and there was a really great demonstrable need for a proactive code enforcement program. And the question I raised at the last meeting was, well, do those conditions exist in the city of West Hollywood? Do we need such a program? Do we have slumlord conditions? You know, what is the experience of your department going out, visiting properties? You know, do we have properties that are in such disrepair, that in unsafe conditions, that we really need to devote city resources to, implement a program like the city of Los Angeles?
Are you asking my opinion, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay. In my opinion, we don't have slumlord conditions in the city of West Hollywood. We have, off the top of my head, we have two particular properties, which I won't get into who the property owners are, their addresses, but they were, in my opinion, substandard of West Hollywood protocol or a level of what we want in West Hollywood. We went through with the city prosecutor, and we're going to go the receivership route because the property owner was non-responsive. However, a family member of the property owner stepped in and worked with the city over the last year and a half, and the properties are much better now, both of them. We get a lot of reactive calls for property maintenance. We've had 671 cases in the last 24 months where people call in, or some of them are proactive, some of them are reactive, where people call to complain about, I have no smoke detectors, or screens are ripped, or a leaky sink. When we go to do those inspections and follow up and do for compliance process, we also look at the building when we're walking in. So say if it's a 12-unit building, the officer walks in, on the way to that unit, they will look at the common areas, the exit signs, the stairwells, things like that, and that will be added to whatever enforcement action that we have when we move forward with the case. But I don't believe that there's a slumlord situation in West Hollywood. I really don't.
Does anyone else? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Is there a need for a proactive code enforcement program?
I don't have a feeling on either way. I don't think it's a bad thing, and I don't necessarily feel it's a good thing. I just, I will let that up to the decision makers.
Does anyone have any questions?
I think based on the discussion in the last meeting that we had, the importance of having such similar to SCIP.
Interrupt you just for a second. So can we just ask, do we have any questions first before we go into whether we should follow this
It was
recommendation?
just a general comment, if you want to make me.
But the only reason I'm asking is because I wanted to
Okay.
read a
All right,
statement
Chair.
from
You- we-
Commissioner before we all started talking,
All
just so
right.
we'd all have that.
Yeah,
If that's okay.
I'll make the comment during the, when it's appropriate.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was interested in what you have to say about the cost.
Well, I figured it out. There's 16,784 rent-stabilized units in the city. It takes, one full-time employee is 2,080 hours a year at a cost of $150,000 to the city. It would, just an average 30-minute inspection for a thorough inspection of each unit in the city boils down to 8,392 hours, which would take one officer approximately 4.34 years to just inspect every unit, rent-stabilized unit in the city. That does not include any time for any enforcement action, driving to and from the buildings. It hasn't factored in any of that. So it's just 4.34 years for one officer to look at every apartment for half an hour. So,
Any other questions before we?
Just, well, okay, no, I guess I'll wait for the discussion then on it. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
We're going,
That's all right. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a interesting one because we could talk about it here, or we could create a committee and talk about it. But so let me just.
Chair Corpus, a question. So how, when would be the reason for code compliance to go currently to inspect the residential units or buildings? What would trigger inspections in
currently,
those?
somebody calling, a tenant calling to come in and say that I have something wrong with my apartment. Sometimes it's not a code compliance issue, it would be a rent stabilization, RSD issue, carpet, drapes, things like that. We send them downstairs, and sometimes they send them to us. But it is mostly reactive.
So if somebody's not reporting anything wrong in the building, or in the parking lot, or in the leaking pipe somewhere on the property, on the premises, or broken windows in the units there, so we wouldn't really know if there is a need for inspection.
Correct. But like I said, we've had 671 property maintenance cases in the last 24 months. That's on average, you go back over the several years, we probably get in every building pretty much across the city every couple of years anyways.
What was the number of cases? I'm sorry.
671
For 12-month period?
for 24-month period.
24-month period. And these are tenants triggered
property-
complaints?
Property maintenance cases.
Property
Some are
ma-
reactive, some are proactive.
Okay. All right, thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'll start with Commissioner Bergstein's statement, and then we can all discuss. Commissioner Bergstein couldn't be here this evening due to a death in his family, but he asked that we please, in his absence, share his thoughts on this issue. So I'll just read it verbatim. I would be in favor of our commission forming a subcommittee to further discuss and bring back possible options for a SCEP-style program for further review by the full commission. Such a program would not be for asking landlords to provide stainless steel and granite kitchens, but just to ensure that basic maintenance and safety issues are being addressed. I could take any commissioners who are interested on a walking tour of various buildings on the east side where it is clearly visible that screens are torn or missing, windows are broken, and that crawl spaces are not adequately sealed up to prevent vermin infestation, to name just a few violations that a SCEP program would come to ensure would be addressed. If the commission does want to proceed with a subcommittee and you would like to have a landlord's voice included, I'd be happy to serve. So with that, if we want to discuss the item in front of us, if we would like to consider creating a committee to further study proactive code enforcement programs and report back to the full commission, we could maybe somebody could present a motion, and then we could discuss that.
you know, this commission, in all the years I've been here, we have had maybe one or two subcommittees. I mean, it's really actually very rare. And if we do form it, where do we meet? Do we meet at City Hall in one of the conference rooms? Could you answer that, Peter?
We will find, I mean, the city will provide us a location, but before we get into that, is that even the direction we want to go? But there's locations that the city will set up.
Well, is it usually done at City Hall? I mean, you were in one, right?
Correct. We've had the meetings happen at City Hall in the
So
past.
you would create the conference, we would use one of the conference rooms at City Hall perhaps, right?
Yeah, or my office, just depending on how large the meeting is.
Is there a motion to consider creating a subcommittee to further study proactive code enforcement programs and report back to the full commission?
I'll make
How
a
many do
motion.
we want on at 3?
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Chair, to form a subcommittee to review this item.
And do we have a second for that, for discussion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, so now we'll discuss that, and you had a question about number of people?
Well, I got the first answer of conference rooms, and I think 3 would be the...
Three would be the max, because we have to be under the quorum.
Right.
Would you like to start, or anyone would like
Well,
to start?
Look, I'm skeptical that there's a need for a proactive code enforcement program in the city. You know, if we had endless resources, yeah, it would be a great thing, but it would be a very expensive program, and I'm not sure it's really needed in the way it was needed in the city of Los Angeles. That being said, I don't have any objection. I think there is probably majority support on the commission for the concept of forming a subcommittee, and if there is, I would support that. And Commissioner Bergstein volunteered to serve on the committee, and I'd be happy with him serving, and any other two commissioners on the commission who might want to serve on this subcommittee.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Or you made the motion.
It's just to kind of clarify or provide a little bit information on the why I believe that such program is important in the city of West Hollywood. It's not only about the slum housing, or whether in West Hollywood we have slum housing. First, I don't believe that we have enough data to say we don't have any slum housing in West Hollywood. Without really going through every building, every unit, we cannot really state that we don't have any slum housing in the city of West Hollywood, because clearly, unless the tenant files a complaint, we wouldn't know what's the condition inside the unit, what's the condition in the building, and just walk into some of the neighborhoods, you will see the deterioration of the building and the windows and the common areas. And some people complain. We live in a small city where we know tenants who are renting the units that are in a very poor condition, but the tenants, out of fear of retaliation, they wouldn't file a complaint. They wouldn't contact the city. That's why we have only 671 cases in 2 years. So I believe if we have a SCEP-like program, that would definitely, first, what that program will do is would ensure that the housing stock is up to code in our city. The units are in a good shape. If there are any problems there, issues there, the inspectors would be able to identify, and the property owners will fix them immediately. And that would provide the basic maintenance. That will cover the basic maintenance issues in those units and the buildings. I think the importance to have it is because we want to provide the basic maintenance to these properties and the units. We want to make sure that the tenants' rights are protected, and if the tenants that don't have to file a complaint against their landlords and possibly face any harassment or retaliation. So that will definitely cover the tenants' rights aspect. Don't forget that we have a large elderly community in this city, a large Russian-speaking community in this city, disabled communities in the city. They wouldn't file a complaint against their management companies or the landlords. That's clearly that's the case. I can assure you that from the Russian-speaking community, there are a lot of people that would never call the city and that will never complain formally against their landlords. So another hand is that these inspections will allow to prevent the further deterioration of those buildings, and will ensure that these properties will longer serve the needs, obviously, and this way we can save the this housing stock, that is the rent stabilization housing stock, which is, I think, priceless. Every unit is a priceless unit. So I believe this program is very important, and I am a strong advocate of this for so many years. I was one of the commissioners. No, at the time I wasn't a commissioner. When I was participating, when I worked for the Coalition for Economic Survival, I was an outreach program organizer, coordinator that worked with the code compliance to enforce this program. It was a wonderful experience and wonderful program. Everybody was happy. I never heard any negative comments from the property owners who went to inspect, and some of the property owners, they were really happy and appreciative that the inspectors went there in a very friendly manner, explained what are the violations, what is the program about, and the things that have to be fixed, or the fire alarms have to be replaced, or window screens have to be replaced. Everybody was in the a win-win situation, the tenants and the property owners. So as I said, I am a strong advocate of this program, and I would like to join the subcommittee and share my information that I have with from the city of Los Angeles, how they're enforcing this SCAP, so that maybe we can implement something for our residents here in West Hollywood. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's purely, just an academic mission. When I, volunteered to put the study session together, it was more just fact-finding. I'm also skeptical, but I also just feel there's so much I don't know about the need in West Hollywood. And I also was kind of encouraged by examples I saw in other cities where this can be scaled back, in the sense of having inspections only when the apartment turns over, or having in other cities where it's been successful in eliminating a lot of code enforcements, where they had landlords swear to some type of listing of things that the inspections would have covered when they re-rent a unit, or yearly, or some sometimes some time frame that makes it more cost efficient than having an inspector go all the time. I guess I feel like there's just so much we don't know about what goes on behind closed doors, and the subcommittee maybe could at least enlighten us a little bit more about what's going on in West Hollywood, and if this was something that made sense for us, even if it started out in some type of pilot fashion, which was much more cost effective than a full rollout. So I just would be interested in forming the subcommittee purely for fact finding.
Did you have any additional?
Well, I think some of these ideas are really meant to be in a subcommittee, but I think because we're such an important rent-stabilized jurisdiction, that I think it's important that we set a standard for others to follow. And I don't buy that we do not have the funds. We talk about our $135 million in reserve, so I think the funds are there. And as far as inspectors, when I was thinking about this earlier, I think the inspection should be done like a team, where you have a maid service and one maid may go in and work 7 or 8 hours all day. But if they have these teams now where 3 or 4 go in and everything is done in an hour or 2, whatever. And I thought that a team concept could be very interesting, where 3 people go in and they could actually be finished maybe in 20 minutes instead of 30 minutes. But I agree with Agassi that really we don't really know until we go in and look at these units and to really see what is going on. And I think maybe we should do this on a sort of a temporary basis to try it out, at least like it was years ago. I think we did it for a year, Agassi, was it?
Yeah, I think it was for a year, maybe a little bit longer.
Basically, those are my thoughts on it. Thank you.
So what I've kind of heard is some of the reasons for setting up the committee are because of our questions. How do we know what the conditions actually are? are tenants fearful of reporting these items? Kind of a general observation of the overall deterioration of a building, and maybe that would help preserve some of the buildings if things are going unnoticed. And kind of what was said was just kind of just an overall, setting this committee up just like an overall fact-finding body. So I don't have any opposition to forming a subcommittee to look into these things. I think that part of some of the stuff that's been talked about, maybe that's what the committee can delve into is how many times we do it, or when we do it, or when the inspections happen, or if this is even something that the committee wants to recommend. My only concern about the committee is, as much as I want anyone who wants to participate, we are limited to 3. I think it is a good idea to have a perspective from a landlord's point of view. I believe, is Commissioner Bergstein the only landlord? We're all renters, right? Is that correct?
I'm a renter.
Are you a renter and a landlord?
I technically am both,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's not rented right now.
Okay. So I like the fact that having a perspective from the landlord's point of view on there, and he has expressed an interest. My only concern, and I don't think if, those are only 2 that specifically said they wanted to be involved, but so that might not be an issue. I just don't want everybody to have said tonight, we want to move forward with this SCEP program, so I want to be on the committee, because that doesn't really help us much. So if it's,
I'll volunteer to be on the committee.
well, I was going to say, because have you taken a position, you're more fact-finding, right?
I haven't taken a position. I don't feel like I know enough, to be honest with you.
That's the only thing, he said he doesn't feel like he knows enough. His role on that would be to fact-find, that he's curious.
Yeah, I'm
to
not
find
an
out.
advocate one way or the other for systematic code enforcement in West Hollywood. I'm interested, I think there's value in learning more to make a decision on it.
So you don't want to serve on the committee?
I don't,
Oh,
I would volunteer if we needed a 3rd, but it sounds like if we have 3, then I'm happy to, to go with that. If Commissioner Bergstein and Agassi.
Well,
I volunteer to serve. Again, it's up to the commission, how to-
You're the pro SCEP guy. So we've got our pro SCEP guy. So would you be interested in serving on it then? Okay. And you don't have any preconceived notions about it? I mean, you could be convinced either way once you start fact-finding?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm a very objective guy.
I didn't feel like you had said one side or the other, so I don't want to make
Chair, let me
I mean,
jump in.
I agree I agree with David to some extent, and I agree with Agassi to some extent. And because it's such opposite spectrum, I think that makes us need to examine it.
All right. Did you?
So I just want the members of the subcommittee to be comfortable with doing this work, because remember, we are right now essentially a little outside of your purview. We don't have direction from council to use staff for this type of real deep delving. So I know Agassi, I think he mentioned providing information from, Commissioner Topchin, from the city of LA. And I think Commissioner Bergstein will most likely, he's willing to share and show some of the issues on the east side. So just be aware and be comfortable on the subcommittee that I can dedicate some time of myself and my staff, but the commissioners are going to have to bring some of this information forward themselves.
And I think we should kind of, as a commission, not real detailed, but kind of give some guidance to what we want from this committee, so that the committee knows what they're out to do and what answers we need. And some of the concerns that I had, that I would like them to think about as you're moving forward with the committee is, I am concerned about cost and making sure that this is something that it's necessary versus the cost. I think we have the money to do it. I want to make sure that the need is there to match the cost. And I think that anything that might get recommended to council, they're going to consider cost, and they get the ultimate decision, but that's going to be a big factor in the whole issue. The other thing is I hope that there will be an effort to look at what additional burden this causes on the landlord as well, because, when we talk about preservation, the Ellis Act is out there, and the more burdensome we make the rent stabilized units to these property owners, I just don't want to push them over into the other side. And then the other thing is the convenience or the making sure that this doesn't disrupt tenants' lives either. I've heard stories from LA tenants that think it's a great idea until they have the inspector come in and find stuff that they have to clean out their closet for a week because they're painting the closet over again. And just little things like that, and not my holes, but my friends' holes in their wall. So those are my concerns, or my 3 areas where I would like the committee to consider when they're bringing back information.
My questions are, how long should this subcommittee meet? How many meetings should we have? Who determines when we're finished? And obviously, when we're finished, there'll have to be a presentation. So I'm not sure what role staff will have, even though it will be limited.
I would think that's up to the subcommittee to some degree to make some of those decisions.
I mean, maybe maybe it could take 6 months, maybe it could take a year.
We could set a
I'm
date.
not sure I'm getting myself into what I want to now.
I would recommend that the commission leave that up to the subcommittee. These questions of how long it goes on, how many times they meet, and it's that the subcommittee's decision when in fact they have the information necessary in order to come back to the commission with a report.
Or what about if we had I'm just going to throw out, for example, because it's on my calendar right here in front of me, if we threw out not an end date of April 12th, but a report. We want an interim report of what either the committee has finished, worked on, or what direction they're planning. Because you're going to, your first meeting is going to be a planning meeting, to kind of figure out what it is you're actually going to look at and how.
Well, also.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, and it's good, but just to caution, that report will come from the subcommittee members, and you do have a very full calendar in the next couple of months. So just be aware, if you're going to set a date, just have some flexibility on that date, because the commissioners that are working on the subcommittee may in fact not have enough time, and they should be, just so I'd ask the commission to be flexible to allow that subcommittee to do the job.
Yeah, and I think that the initial report, or the update, I'll call it, it could simply be, we've only had a chance to meet once because we've all been so busy and schedules have been horrible, but at least the commission knows what's happening.
What we will do.
And it kind of gives you some internal deadlines of, maybe we'd like to have something done by April 12th or 15th or.
What we will do on your agendas going forward is there will be a standing item that will be an update from the subcommittee.
Sounds good. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, look, I think we should give a great deal of autonomy to our subcommittee to really talk about it and try to figure out what direction they want to go in. But I think realistically, the only real recommendation that would ever come from this commission to city council would be, we've determined that there is a need, it's desirable for the city to more formally study a proactive code enforcement program, and whether devote more resources, staff resources, into studying the need, desirability, and if there is a need, if it is desirable, study the options for implementing that type of thing. So I think realistically, I would think the subcommittee should really just focus on a recommendation on whether this is something that we think the city should study more, devote resources and have staff really study it in detail. And
But I'd want them to come back with like reasons why they thought that. I mean, I don't think it's valuable for us to say to the council, we think this is necessary, you should study it, if we don't have public feedback, if we don't have any real reasons.
agreed,
Yeah.
agreed. But that's what the subcommittee would be doing. They'd bring a recommendation back to the full
Yeah.
commission on whether we think this is something that the city should formally study.
Yeah, specific to West Hollywood, not just generically,
Right.
this is a good thing. Yeah.
Why don't we go in with a guideline where the subcommittee would meet 3 times, and after 3 times, we would come back to the commission to report, and then take it from there, decide if the committee should continue because we've compiled enough information and enough ideas, or if we need to stop at that point, instead of making such a long commitment.
I think that's, so what I heard was give the committee flexibility. We kind of gave some ideas of what we wanted them to at least cover. I think if we determine that they should only meet 3 times, I think that needs to involve staff, and they're not ready to answer that, I don't think, right now.
Staff
when-
would be happy to know that there was a number of 3 times, then something ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. I think they could handle 3 meetings. I mean, my sense they could. I mean, that
3 meetings in a month or 3 meetings over 6 months, that's a big difference. And I think that's what Peter's talking about, is that we have a
I'm
kind of...
happy to jump in with staff's perspective,
Sure.
since it's mainly going to affect me and my
Yeah.
schedule. I am perfectly happy and advocate the flexibility. We do have, with the update item on your agendas, that would provide the subcommittee members with the opportunity to share with the commission the progress made. I am very receptive to Commissioner Gregoire's recommendation. I think that that is spot and online with what the role of the commission would be to recommend to the city council to further study this. And so this subcommittee essentially would have somewhat of a limited purview. The subcommittee wouldn't really dig deep into the issues at this point, but look at it and see if there's really a reason to recommend, that there's validity, or there's a perceived validity. You may not have concrete answers, but you have enough of an idea that, yeah, this is worth studying at greater length and depth, so that you formulate that recommendation, as Commissioner Gregoire suggested, to go to the council, get the council to support that, and then allow the council to then dedicate the staff time and allocate the funds to properly delve into what it would mean. So under that recommendation, it may in fact be a different department and different staff that explores this topic, and rightfully so. If the council did direct that, they most likely would direct it to Public Works and Code Compliance to explore, since it's really within their purview and their bailiwick.
I don't see this as being necessary as a standing, it's fine if we want to call it a standing committee for now, but this doesn't need to last forever. This is a subcommittee very focused on this specific issue. Go out, do the work, talk to people, talk to departments, talk to staff, do what you need to do, and then come back here. I won't be supporting anything that doesn't involve community input and actual work in looking at the issue to recommend to council. I think that we recommended one thing to council in the past, and it was the first thing that we've kind of recommended to council, but it also didn't have any teeth or meat to it. And it went on a council report, and it sat on a council report, and it's still sitting there on a council report. So I just want to make sure whatever we send to them, there's a reason we're sending it, and they feel obligated to at least look at it, not necessarily follow through, that's their decision, but at least consider it seriously, and not look at it as a thing that we've sent them because we thought it was a cool idea, and so now they should do something with it. I just hope and I think that all the people involved will actually do that work and make that recommendation, and if not, I won't vote for it.
It sounds like we're doing some of the work right now.
I think we're talking about just the purpose of the committee. So I'm fine if we just come back and report it. I mean, there'll be a spot on the agenda where it's reported, where one of the three of you will give a report on what you guys have been working on, and then if someone wants to pull the plug at some point, the commission can make that motion.
Okay.
I
I'll
mean,
give
does
it a
that
shot.
sound agreeable? We won't make you do it for 5 years or anything like that.
I will give it a shot. I mean, I'm happy to make my contribution. And we've talked about it for a long time. So I think we should move the old saying, you know, get off the pot. And anyway, but I think we, you know, need to get it beyond this point so we could stop talking about it and see if we can achieve our goal. And perhaps we will not need it. I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm glad I'm not sure, because I think that makes me feel I could be more objective.
Do we have any other final comments before someone calls the question, maybe?
Covered everything, so, and with, I agree with manager's clarification on how the commission would basically function, and some of the ideas what we're going to look into, and you, Chair, explain as well. I have nothing else to add.
Okay, so,
We'll want a motion?
yeah, do you want to do a motion? Do you
I
wanna
made a
include the
motion
three?
already, I think,
And I second.
and he seconded.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, call the question. So can we amend the motion, though, just to clarify that Vice Chair Bergstein, Commissioner Maggio, and Commissioner Topchian will be the three members. And since Commissioner Bergstein is the vice chair, can we make him the chair of the subcommittee?
No,
Okay, so with,
No, I think that should be decided when the three get together and not be determined now.
right, and with the amendments that you made,
Minus that one.
minus that one, motion to form a subcommittee.
I second that motion.
Oh, you mean call the question? Yeah, well, okay, yeah, we agree to the amendments and then call the question.
The motion
Yeah.
has to be made with the
Made the motion.
amendments.
With the
Right.
amendments, that's what I said. So minus the one.
We have a roll call vote, and this is the motion to form the subcommittee to focus on, to study proactive code enforcement and report back to the commission. Members will be Vice Chair Bergstein, Commissioner Maggio, and Commissioner Topchian.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Gregoire,
Aye.
Commissioner Topchin,
Aye.
Commissioner Charity,
Aye.
Chair Kerpies.
Aye. Motion passes. We now have a subcommittee. Congratulations, subcommittee
Thank you.
members.
Thank you.
Make us proud. All right, so unfinished business. We'll move into public comments. Do we have any further public comments? Probably not. Okay. Any other further commission comments?
I just wanted to thank you all for staying after and signing the card for our speaker from the last meeting. They really appreciated it, and I just wanted to let the commission know that I sent thank you cards to many of the workers in LA City, and they were all appreciative of the thank yous.
Yeah, it was very thoughtful of you, and I think it's a tradition. Maybe it'll become a tradition, and we should find a way to continue to do that. I think it's helpful because it brings everyone together, makes them feel appreciated, and thank you for thinking of that.
Any other commission comments? All right. Any final staff comments?
No.
All right, then we will adjourn this, or is there a motion to adjourn? All right, adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission meeting, which will be held on January 25th.